I'm Madison, 34, and I still can't believe what happened at my parents' house last Sunday. After driving 3 hours with my exhausted twins, we arrived to find my sister Heather's family already eating dinner. When my hungry kids reached for food, my mother swatted their hands away, saying, "Wait until Rachel's children finish. They're our special guests." The room froze. My sister smirked. My children's eyes filled with tears. 10 years of favoritism crystallized in that moment, and something in me shattered. What happened next changed our family forever, but I regret nothing. If you've ever experienced family favoritism, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. I'd love to know where you're watching from and if you've dealt with similar family dynamics. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up for your children against unfair treatment. Now, let me take you back to where this family drama really began. I've always been the responsible one. Growing up as the eldest daughter in our family, I quickly learned that different rules applied to me versus my younger sister Heather. While I had strict curfews, chore requirements, and high academic expectations, Heather seemed to float through childhood on a cloud of parental adoration and endless second chances. My husband Thomas, 36, noticed the pattern early in our relationship. "Your parents treat you like an adult, and your sister like she's made of glass," he once observed after a holiday dinner where I cooked and cleaned while Heather played games on her phone. I'd shrug it off, making excuses about birth order expectations or Heather's more sensitive nature. Deep down, though, the inequality stung. Our twins, Emma and Ethan, came into our lives 7 years ago after a difficult pregnancy and traumatic birth. While my parents seemed pleased enough with their new grandchildren, their reaction paled compared to the fanfare that erupted 3 years later when Heather had her daughter Rachel. My parents transformed their guest bedroom into a nursery, babysitting weekly, and flooded social media with grandparents' princess posts. When Jacob came along 2 years later, the pattern continued. And when baby Lily arrived 6 months ago, my mother actually took a month off work to help Heather adjust, something she never offered me with twins. The inequality extended to everything. For my children's birthdays, they received modest gifts and cards. For Heather's kids, there were elaborate themed parties with custom cakes and expensive presents. My kids' school accomplishments earned brief congratulations. Heather's children's smallest achievements warranted Facebook announcements and special dinners. The financial disparity was even more glaring. When I needed college tuition, my parents encouraged student loans to build character. Heather received a full ride from the bank of mom and dad. My husband and I scraped together a modest wedding while my parents gave Heather a lavish ceremony that cost more than our first house. When we spent 3 years saving for our down payment, my parents surprised Heather with a housewarming gift that covered half her mortgage. "Have you ever tried just talking to them about it?" Thomas would ask after particularly unbalanced family gatherings. I had. Multiple times. "Mom, I noticed Emma didn't get a birthday call this year, but you drove 6 hours to be at Rachel's party the week before." Don't be so sensitive, Madison. Emma wouldn't remember a phone call anyway, and Rachel specifically asked for her grandparents to be there. "Dad, we could really use some help with the twins' school tuition this year." I wouldn't ask, but the medical bills from Ethan's asthma have really set us back. "Madison, you're a grown woman with a husband who provides. Heather's situation is different. She needs our support right now." After years of these conversations, I suggested family therapy. My parents attended one session, sat stone-faced through the counselor's gentle observations about favoritism, and refused to return, claiming the therapist was biased against them. Thomas eventually convinced me to establish firmer boundaries. We limited visits, shortened phone calls when they turned toxic, and focused on building our own family traditions. Still, I maintained contact, hoping my children could have some relationship with their grandparents and extended family, however imperfect. When the invitation came for the big family reunion, I hesitated. My cousin Kelly, who had witnessed the favoritism firsthand over the years, encouraged me to attend. "Everyone will be there," she said. "Don't let them exclude you from family memories." So I accepted, hoping that with extended family present, my parents might finally treat all their grandchildren equally. I spent a week preparing special dishes my parents used to love, bought thoughtful gifts for everyone, and even created a family photo album as a surprise for my mother's upcoming birthday. I wanted so badly to believe that this time would be different, that my children wouldn't notice they were second-tier grandchildren, that I could finally stop feeling like an outsider in my own family. I was wrong. So very wrong. The morning of the big family gathering, I was up at dawn, finishing the homemade apple pie my father had always claimed was his favorite. The twins helped me wrap the gifts we'd carefully selected for everyone, their little fingers struggling with the tape dispensers as they chattered excitedly about seeing their cousins. "Do you think Grandma will like the picture frame we made?" Emma asked, her hazel eyes wide with hope. "She's going to love it, sweetie," I assured her, wondering if that was actually true. We loaded up our SUV and hit the road by 10, planning to arrive at my parents' suburban home by 1. The drive stretched to 3 hours when an accident on the highway forced us to detour. I called my mother twice to update her on our delay. "We'll be there around 1:30, I explained during the second call. "Well, don't expect us to wait on lunch," she replied tersely. "Heather's children get cranky if they don't eat on schedule." As if mine didn't. By the time we pulled into my parents' driveway, the twins were hungry, tired, and restless from being confined to their car seats for so long. Thomas squeezed my hand. "Remember, 2 hours max. And we can leave if things get uncomfortable," he whispered. The front door was unlocked, but no one greeted us when we entered. Instead, the sounds of clinking silverware and conversation drifted from the dining room. Following the noise, we entered to find a scene that stopped me cold. My parents, sister, brother-in-law Mike, and their 3 children were all seated around the large oak dining table, plates filled with food, already midway through their meal. My Aunt Barbara, Uncle Jim, and several cousins occupied the remaining chairs. A folding card table had been set up in the corner with 3 chairs, clearly meant for us. "Oh, you made it," my mother said, without getting up. We couldn't wait any longer. Rachel was about to have a meltdown from hunger. My 7-year-old twins, who had been patient during a 3-hour car ride and were now facing genuinely empty stomachs, looked up at me with confusion. "Hi, everyone," I said, trying to maintain composure. "Sorry about the delay. There was an accident on the highway." A few relatives murmured greetings. My father nodded without looking up from his plate. Heather smirked as she cut food into tiny pieces for baby Lily. "Is there somewhere we can put our things?" Thomas asked, still holding the pie and gift bags. "Just put them in the kitchen for now," my mother replied, before immediately turning her attention back to Rachel. "Sweetheart, tell Grandma more about your dance recital." Thomas took our belongings to the kitchen while I tried to help the twins get settled at the small card table. No plates had been set out for us. "Mom, do you have plates we can use?" I asked. "In the cabinet, dear. You know where everything is," she replied without looking up. I went to the kitchen, found 3 plates, and returned to set our places. The serving dishes on the main table were half empty now, the best portions already taken. "Come on, kids, let's get some food," I said, guiding Emma and Ethan toward the table. They approached hesitantly, plates in hand, eyeing the diminishing food options. As Emma reached for a dinner roll and Ethan moved to scoop some mashed potatoes, my mother's hand shot out, physically blocking their access. "Madison! Control your children," she snapped. "Rachel, Jacob, and Lily haven't finished yet. They're our special guests, and they get to eat first. Your children can wait for what's left." The room went silent. Emma's lower lip trembled as she pulled her hand back. Ethan looked up at me, confused and embarrassed. Across the table, Rachel, only 2 years older than my twins, gave a triumphant smile and deliberately took another dinner roll, even though her plate already had one. In that moment, I felt something inside me crack. Every birthday overlooked, every accomplishment minimized, every financial disparity, every subtle slight toward my children crashed over me like a tidal wave. The accumulated weight of years of second-class status in my own family crystallized into perfect clarity. My sister's smug expression, my father's averted gaze, my mother's hand, still extended, still physically blocking my hungry children from food at a family gathering. And in that moment, something in me that had bent for decades finally broke. No. The word escaped my lips with quiet force. "Excuse me?" My mother's eyebrows shot up. I said no. My children have been in a car for 3 hours. They're hungry, and they will eat now. Not after your precious grandchildren have had their fill. Madison, you're being dramatic as usual. My mother sighed, turning to the table. This is exactly what I mean about teaching your children patience. Yeah, Maddie, Heather chimed in, using the childhood nickname she knew I hated. The world doesn't revolve around your kids. Rachel and Jacob are younger. They need to eat first. Emma and Ethan are literally only 1 year older than Jacob, I pointed out, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. And they've been waiting patiently all day while your children have been here snacking since they arrived. It's not a big deal. My father finally spoke, still not looking at me. Just let the little ones finish first. Thomas stepped forward, placing his hands protectively on our children's shoulders. With all due respect, our children are hungry now. There's plenty of food for everyone, and no reason they should wait. My mother waved her hand dismissively at Thomas, as she'd done countless times before, treating his input as irrelevant. This doesn't concern you. Something snapped inside me. I walked calmly to the table, took 2 clean plates from the stack, and began filling them with food. The room went utterly silent. Madison Jean Wallace, what do you think you're doing? My mother's voice had taken on the sharp edge I remembered from childhood scoldings. I'm feeding my children, I replied evenly, continuing to place food on the plates. If you can't respect the rules in our house, maybe you shouldn't be invited to family gatherings anymore, she threatened. I set the plates down at the card table for Emma and Ethan, who looked uncertain whether they were allowed to eat. I nodded encouragement to them before turning back to the stunned room. Let me make something perfectly clear, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. This isn't about one meal. This is about years of treating my children as less important than Heather's. That's ridiculous, my father protested. Is it? Let's talk about birthdays. Last year, you forgot Emma's entirely. For Rachel's, you bought her a tablet and threw her a party that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. That's different, my mother huffed. How about school? When Ethan won the spelling bee, I got a text saying, "That's nice." When Jacob made the soccer team, you posted 16 photos on Facebook calling him your star athlete and took the family out to dinner. You're keeping score? Heather interjected. That's petty even for you, Madison. I wouldn't have to keep score if there was any semblance of equality, I replied. Mom and Dad paid for your entire college education while I'm still paying off student loans. They gave you a wedding that cost $60,000 while Thomas and I got a card with a $100 check. They gave you a down payment for your house while telling us we needed to work harder to afford one ourselves. My Aunt Barbara's eyes widened at this information. Several of my cousins exchanged uncomfortable glances. You've always been jealous of your sister, my mother accused. Ever since she was born, you've resented her. This isn't about jealousy, I said firmly. This is about watching you treat my children like they matter less. And I'm done. I'm absolutely done allowing it. What is that supposed to mean? My father demanded. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange calm descend over me. It means we're leaving. My family deserves better than to be treated as an afterthought. You can't be serious, my mother scoffed. You're going to leave a family reunion because your children had to wait 5 minutes for food? No, I'm leaving because after 34 years, I've finally accepted that nothing I ever do will be good enough for you, and I refuse to let my children grow up feeling the same way. I turned to Emma and Ethan. Finish eating quickly, kids. We're going to go home. Madison, don't be ridiculous, Heather said, though I noticed a hint of uncertainty in her voice now. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being a parent, something our parents could learn from. I looked directly at my mother. My children deserve grandparents who love them equally, not conditionally based on whose womb they came from. The shocked silence that followed was broken only by the sound of my cousin Kelly's slow, deliberate applause from the corner of the room. Well, it's about time someone said it, she remarked. I gathered our belongings while Thomas helped the twins finish their food. No one moved to stop us. As we headed toward the door, I turned back one last time. When you're ready to treat all your grandchildren equally, you know where to find us. Until then, don't call, don't visit, and don't expect to be part of our lives. And with that, we walked out, leaving behind a stunned family and decades of accepted inequality. The drive home was tense. Emma and Ethan sat quietly in the back seat, occasionally whispering to each other. I caught Thomas glancing at me every few minutes, his expression a mix of concern and pride. "Are you okay?" he finally asked when we were about halfway home. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I'm relieved, angry, sad, guilty, everything all at once." "Mommy?" Emma's small voice came from the back seat. "Are we in trouble with Grandma and Grandpa?" My heart ached at the worried look on her face. How do you explain toxic family dynamics to a 7-year-old? "No, sweetie, you're not in trouble at all," I assured her, turning in my seat to face the twins. Sometimes grown-ups don't treat each other fairly, and it's important to speak up when that happens. "But why doesn't Grandma like us as much as Rachel and Jacob?" Ethan asked, his question piercing straight to the heart of the issue. "It's not that she doesn't like you," I said carefully. "Some adults have trouble treating everyone fairly, even when they should know better. But that has nothing to do with you. You are both wonderful. And anyone who doesn't see that is missing out." The twins seemed to accept this explanation for now, but I knew there would be more difficult questions ahead. When my phone started buzzing with text messages, I turned it off without looking. I needed time to process what had happened before facing the inevitable fallout. By the time we arrived home, the twins were exhausted. Thomas took charge of bedtime while I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my silent phone, knowing it contained a barrage of messages I wasn't ready to read. After the children were asleep, Thomas returned with 2 glasses of wine. "You were amazing today," he said, sitting across from me. "I've been waiting years for you to stand up to them like that." "I shouldn't have made a scene," I murmured, doubt creeping in. Maybe there was a better way to handle it. "Madison, you've tried every better way for years. You've had calm discussions, therapy sessions, one-on-one talks. None of it made any difference because they don't want to change. Sometimes the only option left is to draw a hard line." I finally turned my phone back on, watching as notifications flooded the screen. 3 missed calls from my mother, 2 from my father, 5 from Heather, plus numerous texts. I opened my mother's first. "I can't believe you would embarrass us like that in front of the whole family. Your father and I have always treated you and your sister equally. This jealousy needs to stop. Call me when you're ready to apologize." My father's message wasn't much better. "Your mother is very upset. I understand you were tired from the drive, but that's no excuse for your behavior. Family should come first." Heather's texts were more direct. "Way to ruin another family gathering with your drama. Mom's crying because of you." Again, some things never change. I blocked all 3 numbers, at least temporarily. I couldn't handle their gaslighting right now. But then came messages from extended family. My cousin Kelly, "Been waiting years for someone to call them out. Proud of you. Let me know if you need anything." My Aunt Barbara, "Your mother and I need to have a long overdue conversation. I've watched this happen for years and said nothing. I'm sorry, Madison. You deserved better." Even my normally quiet sister-in-law Jen sent support. "Thomas told my husband what happened. For what it's worth, we've noticed the favoritism too. Standing with you." I read these messages to Thomas, tears finally flowing freely. "I'm not crazy. Am I? I'm not imagining this." "You've never been crazy," Thomas assured me, taking my hand. "You've just been gaslit for so long you started to doubt your own reality." That night, after Thomas went to bed, I sat with my journal, something my therapist Dr. Rivera had recommended years ago. I wrote everything: the incident, my feelings, my fears about the path forward. As the words flowed onto the page, doubt crept in again. Had I overreacted? Would this estrangement hurt my children more than the favoritism? Was there a better way I could have handled the situation? But then I remembered Emma's face when my mother blocked her from the food, the casual cruelty of the moment, and the years of similar incidents that had led to it. No, I decided. This boundary was long overdue. I made a decision. 2 weeks of no contact while I sorted through my emotions and consulted with Dr. Rivera about how to move forward. My family deserved that time to heal before facing the hurricane of manipulation I knew was coming. If you've ever had to make that difficult choice to set boundaries with family, drop a comment about how you handled the aftermath. It's such a challenging time when you're questioning yourself, but also feeling the relief of finally standing up for what's right. Let's take a moment now to continue with what happened next in this family drama. The 2-week communication break I'd planned quickly proved impossible. 3 days after the dinner incident, my parents' smear campaign was in full swing. Distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly texted asking why I was tearing the family apart over nothing. My mother had apparently been making tearful phone calls, describing how I'd always been jealous and ruined a beautiful family reunion with my selfishness. Heather took a different approach, posting a series of photos on social media showing her children with my parents, captioned with gems like, "So blessed to have supportive parents who love their grandchildren unconditionally, number family first, number blessed and nothing more important than family harmony and forgiveness, number pray for healing." The not-so-subtle message was clear. I was the problem, the disruptor of family peace. My resolve was tested 5 days after the incident when my parents showed up unannounced at our front door while Thomas was at work. I was helping the twins with homework when the doorbell rang. "Madison, we need to talk," my father demanded when I opened the door. "This has gone on long enough." "I told you I needed space," I replied, keeping my body in the doorway to block their entry. "I'm not ready to discuss this yet." "These are our grandchildren too," my mother interjected, attempting to peer around me into the house. "You can't keep them from us." "Actually, I can," I said firmly, "and I will until we've established some ground rules about how my children are treated." "This is ridiculous," my father huffed. "We've never treated the grandchildren differently." The blatant denial of reality I'd witnessed firsthand was stunning. "Please leave. When I'm ready to talk, I'll contact you." "Emma! Ethan!" my mother called out, raising her voice to be heard inside. "Grandma and Grandpa are here to see you." "Stop it," I hissed, feeling my anger rise. "You don't get to manipulate my children because you can't respect my boundaries." The twins appeared behind me, confused by the commotion. "See what you're doing?" my mother accused. "Keeping them from family who love them." "Mommy?" Ethan asked quietly. "Why can't Grandma and Grandpa come in?" Faced with my children's confusion, I made a snap decision I later questioned. 15 minutes, I told my parents. "Then you need to leave." They swept past me, all smiles for the twins, bearing small gifts I knew were hastily purchased to curry favor. I watched like a hawk as they interacted with my children, noting how even in this crisis moment, they spoke more directly to Ethan, the boy, while giving Emma distracted responses. True to form, 15 minutes later they were still planted firmly on my couch, ignoring my hints about leaving. When I finally insisted, my mother turned to the twins. "Grandma and Grandpa have to go now, but we'd visit more often if your mommy would let us. We miss you so much." The calculated guilt trip aimed at my children was the final straw. I ushered my parents out, ignoring their protests, and locked the door firmly behind them. That evening, I had to explain to my confused children why they couldn't see their grandparents right now. "Sometimes adults need time apart to figure things out," I said carefully. "Just like when you and your friend Jaden had that big fight and needed a break before you could play together nicely again." "But will we ever see Grandma and Grandpa again?" Emma asked, her eyes wide. "Yes," I assured her, hoping it was true, "but only when they can be kind and fair to everyone." The family division grew wider as relatives took sides. My mother's younger brother and his wife firmly supported her version of events. My father's sister, Barbara, however, called me privately. "I need to tell you something," she said hesitantly. "Your mother and we had a similar dynamic growing up. Our mother favored her, just like she favors Heather. I recognized the pattern years ago, but never said anything. I should have." This revelation stunned me. Mom was the favorite child too? Yes, and she's recreating the same toxic pattern. It doesn't excuse it, but it might help explain it. There's more family history here than you know. Meanwhile, Heather's tactics escalated. She began sending mutual friends and relatives to talk sense into me. My cousin Mark called to tell me I was breaking our parents' hearts and asked if I could just apologize so everyone can move on. When that failed, the inheritance threats started. "Your father and I are revising our will. My mother informed me in a voicemail. If this estrangement continues, we'll have no choice but to reflect that in our estate planning. Is that really what you want? The financial manipulation might have worked years ago, but now it only confirmed I was making the right choice. I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Rivera, my therapist. They're pulling out all the classic manipulation tactics, she observed after I recounted the recent events. Denial, triangulation, flying monkeys, financial threats, guilt-tripping your children, textbook stuff. Am I doing the right thing? I asked. Still plagued by doubt. Madison, you're protecting your children from a harmful pattern, she reassured me. That's always the right thing. The question now is, what does moving forward look like for you? Thomas's parents, who had witnessed the favoritism over the years, offered their support and a crucial outside perspective. We've seen how they treat your children compared to Heather's, my mother-in-law said during a Sunday visit. It's not right, and it's not in your head. Whatever you decide about contact moving forward, we support you. My childhood friend Sarah, who had spent countless hours at my family home growing up, called after hearing about the incident through mutual connections. I never said anything because it wasn't my place, she admitted. But I always saw how differently your parents treated you and Heather. The expectations for you were impossibly high while she could do no wrong. I'm sorry I never validated what you were experiencing. Each outside perspective strengthened my resolve. The favoritism wasn't imagined, wasn't just sibling rivalry, wasn't normal family dynamics. It was real, it was harmful, and it had gone on long enough. The most disturbing escalation came when I discovered anonymous comments on Heather's social media posts attacking me personally. Some people are just jealous of their more successful siblings, wrote one account created just days earlier. Some mothers put their own feelings before their children's relationship with loving grandparents, wrote another. The writing style in several comments was suspiciously similar to my mother's. Through it all, I held firm to my boundary, though the pressure was intense. I focused on my children, who seemed more relaxed without the stress of navigating their grandparents' unequal treatment. I threw myself into work projects that had been on the back burner, and I continued my individual therapy, working through decades of family dynamics that had shaped my self-worth in ways I was only now recognizing. The storm would eventually pass, I told myself. I just had to weather it first. As weeks turned into months, the barrage of messages from my family gradually slowed. The initial crisis phase gave way to a strained silence as they realized I wasn't going to be manipulated into returning to the status quo. In this unexpected quiet, I found space to focus inward for perhaps the first time in my adult life. Dr. Rivera, my therapist, suggested we use this period to explore the patterns I'd normalized throughout childhood. You've been so focused on protecting your children from what hurt you, but we haven't fully addressed how those experiences shaped you, she pointed out. Our weekly sessions became a journey through memories I'd long suppressed. The time my parents missed my high school valedictorian speech because Heather had a minor cold. The Christmas when my gift was practical clothing while Heather received the expensive electronics we both wanted. Countless instances where my achievements were diminished while Heather's were celebrated. I believed I deserved less, I admitted during one particularly raw session. I internalized this idea that I was somehow less lovable, less important. And how has that belief system affected your adult relationships? Dr. Rivera asked. The question hit me like a thunderbolt. I realized I'd spent years overcompensating in friendships, in my marriage, in my career, constantly trying to prove my worth. I apologized excessively, rarely asked for help, and felt disproportionate guilt whenever I put my needs first. Thomas noticed the shifts in me as I processed these realizations. You stood up to your boss about the unpaid overtime yesterday, he observed one evening. The old Madison would have just accepted it. He was right. Something fundamental was changing in me. Without the constant drain of trying to win my parents' equal approval, I had more emotional energy for everything else. My work performance improved. I slept better. I found myself more present with my children, less anxious about whether I was measuring up as a mother. Thomas and I began creating new family traditions to replace the obligatory visits to my parents that had punctuated our calendar. We started Adventure Sundays where we explored a new hiking trail, museum, or neighborhood each week. We initiated seasonal family projects, like planting a garden in spring and making homemade Halloween costumes in fall. I like our family better this way, Emma announced one evening as we played a board game, something we rarely had time for when family obligations consumed our weekends. I did too. Without the stress of navigating my parents' favoritism, the twins seemed to flourish. Their teachers commented on their increased confidence and participation in class. They argued less with each other, perhaps no longer unconsciously competing for attention as they'd seen modeled in my family. My reading habits shifted from fiction to books on family systems, generational trauma, and boundary setting. Titles like Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents and The Golden Child Syndrome illuminated patterns I'd never had names for. I joined online support groups for adult children of unfair parenting, finding comfort in stories that mirrored my own. Most revelatory were my new insights into Heather's behavior. Dr. Rivera helped me see how the golden child role had harmed her too, in different ways. Your sister likely fears losing her special status, she explained. Her identity is built around being the preferred child. Your boundaries threaten that foundation. I never thought about it that way, I admitted. I always assumed she enjoyed her position. On the surface, yes. But golden children often develop deep insecurities. They wonder if they're truly loved for themselves or only for meeting their parents' needs. They may struggle with authentic relationships because they've learned love is conditional. This perspective softened some of my anger toward Heather, though it didn't excuse her participation in the family dynamic. I began writing letters I never intended to send, a therapeutic exercise, Dr. Rivera suggested. I wrote to my parents, to Heather, even to my childhood self, pouring out decades of unexpressed feelings. Dear Heather, I wonder if you even realize what's been happening all these years. Did you notice when Mom dropped everything to attend your school play but missed my graduation? Did you think it was normal when Dad bought you a car for your 16th birthday while telling me to save my babysitting money? I've been so angry with you for so long. But lately, I've been wondering if you're trapped, too, in a different way. Do you know who you are outside of being their favorite? Do you worry that their love depends on you maintaining that role? I miss the sister relationship we never really had. I wonder if we ever could. Thomas noticed the changes in our marriage as well. You're not walking on eggshells anymore, he observed, as we prepared dinner together one evening. You disagree with me now, without apologizing first. He was right. Years of trying to be the perfect daughter had turned me into a people pleaser in all my relationships. As I healed from my family dynamics, I found my authentic voice, sometimes surprising myself with opinions I hadn't realized I held. 4 months into our estrangement, an unexpected email arrived from my Aunt Barbara. Your mother never told you this, but our mother treated her exactly as she treats Heather, while I was in your position. The cycle continues until someone breaks it. You're breaking it for your children. I wish I'd had your courage. This confirmation of intergenerational patterns strengthened my resolve. I wasn't just protecting my children from present hurt. I was preventing them from perpetuating these dynamics with their own families someday. Do you think you'll ever reconcile with them? Thomas asked one night as we lay in bed. I don't know, I answered honestly. Not without real change. Not without acknowledgement. And if that never happens? I considered the question carefully. 6 months earlier, the thought of permanent estrangement would have seemed unimaginable, a failure of my duty as a daughter. Now, I saw it differently. Then we'll keep building our family culture based on equality and respect, I said. I grieve what I wished my family could be, but I won't sacrifice my children's emotional health for a fantasy. As I continued this journey of growth, I found myself stronger, clearer, and more at peace than I'd been in decades. The path forward wasn't certain, but for the first time, I was walking it on my own terms. 3 months after the dinner incident, an unexpected name appeared on my caller ID. My father. I almost didn't answer, but something told me this call might be different. Madison? It's Dad. His voice sounded older, tired, in a way I hadn't heard before. I know, Dad. What do you need? I kept my tone neutral, protective walls firmly in place. I'd like to talk. Just me. No Mom, no Heather. Just us. After a moment's consideration, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. Thomas was concerned about the meeting, worried about me facing family manipulation alone. I can handle it, I assured him, surprising myself with my confidence. If he starts the usual routine, I'll leave. My father was already seated when I arrived, looking smaller somehow, less imposing than the man who had loomed large in my childhood. We exchanged awkward greetings before he cleared his throat. I've been doing a lot of thinking since. What happened? He began, staring into his coffee. And I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. He paused, visibly struggling. You're right. About the favoritism. All of it. I sat in stunned silence as he continued. I've always known it wasn't fair how differently we treated you and Heather, and then your kids and hers. I told myself it was because Heather needed more support, more attention. But that wasn't it. Then what was it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Your mother was treated the same way growing up. Her mother favored her over Barbara, dramatically so. When we had you girls, she unconsciously recreated the pattern. And I enabled it. I didn't want to rock the boat. He explained how my mother's relationship with her own mother had been based on this uneven dynamic. When my grandmother died 10 years ago, my mother had slipped into a depression that coincided with her increased preferential treatment of Heather. It doesn't excuse it, my father said, meeting my eyes for the first time. Nothing excuses how we've hurt you and your children. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see it now, and I'm sorry. So deeply sorry. His admission left me speechless. After decades of gaslighting and denial, hearing the truth acknowledged was both validating and disorienting. What about Mom? I finally asked. Does she recognize any of this? My father's expression fell. She's not ready to see it. The comparison to her own mother is too painful. When I tried to discuss it after you left that day, she shut down completely. And Heather? Heather believes what she's always been told. That you're jealous and oversensitive. He paused. I think deep down, she knows something isn't right. But admitting it would mean questioning her place in the family. I absorbed this information, uncertain how to proceed. Why are you telling me this now, Dad? Because I miss my grandchildren, he answered simply. And because at 68, I'm finally realizing that enabling your mother's behavior hasn't helped anyone, least of all her. His vulnerability sparked a mix of emotions. Vindication. Grief for what could have been. Cautious hope for what might still be possible. I'd like to see the twins, he continued. On your terms. Whatever boundaries you need. I considered his request carefully. I need to think about it. And if it happens, there would be conditions. No comparisons between cousins. Equal treatment. No undermining my parenting. And initially, visits without Mom or Heather present. He nodded solemnly. I understand. Over the next few weeks, my father and I had several more conversations. He revealed more about my mother's childhood, helping me understand her behavior without excusing it. Her mother had raised her to believe she was special, superior, while my Aunt Barbara was treated as an afterthought. My mother had internalized this dynamic so completely that she couldn't see herself reproducing it. Your confrontation triggered something in her, my father explained during our third meeting. She's been having panic attacks, talking about how she's losing everything like her mother did. It took another month before my mother reached out, though not in the way I'd hoped. Rather than acknowledging any wrongdoing, she sent a text. This has gone on long enough. We should move past this for the sake of the family. When I didn't immediately agree, she oscillated between anger and pleading. One day, she'd send messages accusing me of cruelty. The next, she'd leave tearful voicemails asking why I was punishing her. Heather's reaction to my private meetings with our father was predictable. So you're turning Dad against Mom now, too? Haven't you done enough damage to this family? She texted after discovering we'd been talking. I didn't respond to her accusations, focusing instead on the careful rebuilding of trust with my father. After 6 weeks of coffee shop conversations, I agreed to let him visit our home to see the twins. The reunion was emotional but positive. He brought identical gifts for both children and made a visible effort to give them equal attention. 2 months later, a breakthrough occurred. My extended family had planned a gathering at my Aunt Barbara's house. My father asked if we would attend, promising to run interference with my mother if needed. After much deliberation, we decided to go. The tension was palpable when we arrived. My mother hovered anxiously near the door, while Heather stood across the room, arms crossed defensively. The twins stayed close to Thomas and me, sensing the undercurrent of strain. Midway through the afternoon, as relatives mingled in small groups, my father clinked his glass for attention. "I have something I need to say," he announced, his voice wavering slightly. "Our family has been going through a difficult time, and I want to take responsibility for my part in it." The room quieted as he continued. "For many years, there's been an unequal treatment of my daughters, and subsequently, my grandchildren. Madison pointed this out repeatedly, and I dismissed her concerns. I was wrong." My mother's face blanched. Heather's mouth fell open. I stood frozen, hardly believing what I was hearing. "From this point forward, I'm committed to treating both my daughters and all my grandchildren with equal love, attention, and support," my father continued. "I hope others in this family will join me in that commitment." The silence that followed was broken by my Aunt Barbara's quiet, "Here, here," from the corner. Several relatives murmured in agreement. My mother, looking as though she'd been slapped, turned and walked quickly from the room. In the emotional aftermath of my father's public acknowledgement, several family dynamics shifted dramatically. My mother, after her initial shock and anger, fell into a period of withdrawal and tearful outbursts. During one particularly raw moment at my Aunt Barbara's house, she broke down. "Everyone's turning against me?" she sobbed. "First Madison, now your father. Even Barbara. I've only ever tried to be a good mother and grandmother." It was my aunt who gently pressed, "But have you been equally good to both daughters and all grandchildren?" Something about the question, coming from her childhood rival, pierced through my mother's defenses. For the first time, she didn't immediately deny the accusation. Instead, she looked stricken, vulnerable. That moment of doubt created an opening. With my aunt's encouragement, my mother reluctantly agreed to meet with Dr. Rivera, who specialized in family systems therapy. Their first session was rocky, with my mother maintaining she'd been misunderstood and was the real victim in the situation. But she returned for a second session, then a third. After the fourth session, Dr. Rivera suggested a joint meeting with me. "Your mother isn't ready to fully acknowledge the pattern," she warned me privately, "but she's beginning to see glimpses of it, especially in how her mother treated her and your aunt." The first structured family meeting was tense and tearful. My mother vacillated between defensiveness and genuine confusion about why her behavior was harmful. "I just love Heather's children," she insisted. "That doesn't mean I don't love yours, too." "But love isn't just about feelings," I pointed out. "It's about actions. And your actions have consistently shown my children they're less important." We ended that session with minimal progress but agreed to continue meeting. Dr. Rivera introduced specific exercises to help my mother recognize differential treatment, including reviewing family photos, gift histories, and time spent with each set of grandchildren. The real test came 2 months later when we agreed to a carefully supervised visit between my children and their grandparents. I prepared Emma and Ethan thoroughly, explaining that we were working on having a healthier relationship with Grandma and Grandpa, but that they should tell me if anything made them uncomfortable. My father greeted the twins warmly, with identical gift bags containing books they'd each expressed interest in during his previous visit. My mother's interaction was more hesitant but notably more balanced than in the past. When she began to focus excessive attention on Ethan, I caught her eye. She paused, visibly recalibrated, and made a point to ask Emma about her recent dance class. It was a small moment, but significant. For perhaps the first time, she had recognized her behavior and consciously adjusted it. As we left, she pulled me aside. "I'm trying, Madison," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "I don't always see it, but I'm trying." It wasn't a full acknowledgement or apology, but it was a beginning. 1 year after the dinner incident that changed everything, our family gathered once again at my parents' house. The intervening months had brought painful conversations, tentative reconciliations, relapses into old patterns, and gradual, imperfect progress. The scene this time couldn't have been more different. My father greeted us warmly at the door, hugging each twin with equal enthusiasm. My mother, though still somewhat stiff, had set the table with nameplates for everyone, including special cups that each grandchild had decorated during a previous visit. Most telling was the seating arrangement. The children alternated with adults, with no special kids' table relegating anyone to second-class status. "We're having a buffet-style dinner," my mother announced. "Everyone can serve themselves when they're ready." Thomas caught my eye, a silent acknowledgement of how far we'd come from that day when my hungry children were told to wait for leftovers. The transformation hadn't been quick or easy. My mother had continued therapy, working through her own childhood experiences, and gradually recognizing how they'd shaped her parenting. She still struggled at times, occasionally slipping into old habits of lavishing attention on Heather's children before catching herself. "Your mother may never completely overcome this pattern," Dr. Rivera had cautioned during a joint session. "These behaviors were formed over decades and reinforced across generations. The question is whether she can become aware enough to consistently counteract her instincts." My father had proven more adaptable than I'd expected. Once freed from his enabling role, he developed genuine relationships with Emma and Ethan, calling them regularly just to chat and showing up for school events that my mother sometimes still found overwhelming. "I missed so much hiding behind your mother's stronger personality," he confessed during one of our coffee meetings. "I'm getting to know my grandchildren for the first time, really." Heather had been the most resistant to change. When our parents began treating all grandchildren more equally, she reacted with hurt and betrayal, accusing them of loving Madison's kids more now, in an ironic reversal of the dynamic I'd experienced for years. "She's built her identity around being the favorite," my Aunt Barbara observed. "Without that, she's not sure who she is." Our sister relationship remained strained, with occasional civil interactions at family gatherings but little warmth. I'd accepted that we might never be close, though I remained open to the possibility of a healthier dynamic developing over time. The most profound changes had occurred within me. The constant anxiety I'd carried for decades had gradually lifted. I no longer second-guessed my worth or apologized for taking up space. My marriage had strengthened as I brought a more authentic self to our relationship. Most importantly, I'd broken a generational pattern for my children, showing them that love shouldn't come with conditions or comparisons. At tonight's dinner, watching my children interact confidently with their grandparents, I felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication that my concerns had been valid, grief for the years of family harmony we'd lost to dysfunctional patterns, cautious hope for the healthier relationships we were building. After dinner, as everyone moved to the living room for dessert, my mother touched my arm, holding me back. "Madison," she began hesitantly, "I've been meaning to tell you something important." I braced myself, unsure what was coming. "I'm sorry," she said simply, "for all of it. The way I favored Heather growing up, the different standards, how I treated her children compared to yours." She took a shaky breath. "Dr. Rivera has helped me see how my mother did the same to Barbara, and how I carried that forward without even realizing it." Tears pricked my eyes at the apology I'd waited decades to hear. "Thank you for saying that, Mom. I can't promise I'll never slip up," she continued. "These patterns are deeply ingrained. But I want you to know I'm committed to doing better. Your children deserve the same love and attention as Heather's." "They always did," I said quietly. She nodded, acknowledging the truth of this. "Yes, they always did." It wasn't a perfect resolution. Old habits occasionally resurfaced. Heather still struggled with the new family dynamic. My mother sometimes needed gentle reminders about equitable treatment. But we were moving forward with awareness and intention, breaking patterns that had persisted for generations. Later that evening, as we prepared to leave, I overheard my father speaking to the twins. "I'm so proud of both of you," he told them, making eye contact with each child individually. "Emma, your art project you showed me was incredible. And Ethan, I can't wait to come to your science fair next week." My children beamed under his genuine attention, no longer competing for scraps of acknowledgement. As we drove home, Thomas reached for my hand. "You know what you did was extraordinary, right?" he said. "You didn't just stand up for our kids that day. You changed the course of your entire family. Looking back at my sleeping children in the rearview mirror, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been painful, the confrontations difficult, the healing imperfect. But in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made the right choice that day when I finally said enough. Some family patterns are so deeply entrenched they seem impossible to change. But standing up for what's right, especially when it protects your children, is always worth the struggle. My family will never be perfect, but we're learning, growing, and building something healthier for the next generation. And that's a legacy worth fighting for. If this family story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to family favoritism or set difficult boundaries with parents or siblings? What happened when you finally said enough? Your story matters too, and sharing our experiences helps others feel less alone. Please like this video if you found value in my journey, subscribe for more authentic family stories, and share with someone who might need to hear they're not crazy for recognizing unfair treatment. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, it's never too late to break harmful patterns and create the family dynamic you and your children deserve.